Welcome to Break Away from the Rat Race, a podcast series to awaken your entrepreneurial spirit and help you achieve financial freedom. On our show, you'll learn about investments and how to create passive income. Let's get started with your host, Eric Martel.
Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a little bit of a shocker title, Don't Save for Retirement. So you read correctly. And basically in the next few minutes I will explain why I don't think you should save for retirement. There are other alternatives and I'm thinking more like invest for retirement instead of just passively save for investments. And really then what I would like to start with is to have a quick look back, really spend like a minute or two to explain the change in mentality or in philosophy around retirement and who should how we should be financing or preparing for retirement. And basically prior to 1800, people would work until they die. Basically that was the mentality at the time. There was really nothing else after that. So you work till you die or you became disabled. But in those days, the life expectancy was about 40 years. So it was still okay. During the 1920s, so after the World War I, this was what we call the Roaring Twenties, and then the U.S. went through a massive economic boom led by technology such as radios and automobiles. Yeah, that's right. In those days, these were technologies, and then in those days, people had money. They had good jobs, good money. They were able to afford automobiles and all the technologies that were becoming available. And many of them also invested in the stock market. Some of them felt, because the stock market kept going up and up, people felt that they were really great investors because their stock, they kept making more and more money. If we look at it around here, it's not, it's really a blip in the overall Dow Jones Industrial Average curve over, the last 100 or so years. So it really doesn't record that much. But this is what it looked like to them. Starting in 1918, all the way to 1928, you can see that, the stock market was really growing rapidly. It almost looks like how this was going very rapidly. But in 1929, you all remember the crash, and then it really came crashing down, and then it was the beginning of the Great Depression. And millions of Americans at the time saw their life savings evaporate, and they became more aware of a need to provide for their future economic security. So they wanted to have more security, and in 1935, around here, the Social Security Act basically was passed, and it provided basic income protection to retired workers. So that way, they wouldn't necessarily, if something happened with their money, their savings, they would still be able to retire relatively comfortably. As the economy improved over the years here, the idea that employees should have some kind of defined benefit at retirement gained more attraction, right? So, and then it led to the increase in the creation of private pension plans. So companies were then they were doing very well, so they were able to afford to pay defined benefit pensions to their employees. And for the next couple of generations, if you had a good job with an established company, basically your retirement was secured, was safe. You didn't have to worry about it. You didn't have to save. And then, and most of the employees, they felt they would work for the same company their entire career. This came though to a little bit of an issue in 1963 when the Studebaker company went bankrupt. In and of itself, it's not a big deal, but this bankruptcy actually brought on the collapse of the pension plan and for its employees. And then that triggered a lot of a growing change really with respect to defined benefit plan and how the employees felt about their pension plan, how safe they were. And so employees wanted and demanded more protection, and they also demanded more control. They wanted to make sure that their money was invested wisely, and then so that basically that their pension was secure. And it took a while, but in 1978, right here, this is when the Revenue Act was passed, and that really cleared the way to defined contribution plan. So a few years earlier, there was another act, the ERISA Act, that really provided more security around the retirement. But in 1978, this is when there's basically an answer to the employees' demand for more control and the ability to save by themselves for their retirement. And so that Revenue Act of 1978 cleared the way for defined contribution by allowing employees to save for retirement with their pre-taxed dollars. So that was, and this is also in that act where we have the 401k. So this is actually section 401k of that act that really began what we know today as a 401k. But over the years after that, it was really a shift on the responsibility for creating that retirement income. And it basically shifted from the employer, who was ensured that the pension plan was funded, that there was enough reserve and all of that, and it was invested properly. And it shifted to the employees, who basically at retirement, they would basically buy the pension that they were able to afford. But the employees, especially at the time, they were largely unprepared to make any kind of investment decision or to save adequately. How much should I save? How long? And what's and where should I invest the money? But from that point on, you can see that more and more money was coming into the stock market, and this is one of the factors that caused the stock market to rise so rapidly. Is because of that influx of money into mutual fund, into all kinds of 401k plan to basically invest in the stock market. And this is also when the call to save for retirement grew louder and louder, because a lot of these mutual funds, a lot of these financial institutions, they wanted the money. So they wanted to get as much money as possible so that they can invest. And so this is pretty much what happened here. So, but then they keep saying, save money, but what are we saving money for? The plan was that at retirement, you would buy an annuity. And what is an annuity? It's a financial product where you pay a premium and to receive, in exchange to receive a regular cash flow, regular stream of income. But that premium that you pay, so it's not an investment. You're not investing that money somewhere. You're basically paying a stream of income. You're buying a product. So that amount of money that you are paying, the premium, is gone. A little bit like when you buy an insurance company, insurance for the house and stuff. That premium now belongs to the insurance company. So it's the same for the annuity. Is that when you buy this particular product, that premium is gone and now belongs to the insurance company. So when we look at passive income and stream of income, it doesn't matter which type of investment we're looking at. We're always looking for some criteria that are beneficial to us, right? So for us, we're looking for obviously steady and reliable cash flow. We want to make sure that we can rely on that cash flow to come in, and we don't have to worry about it. It's going to continue after death, so that I don't have to worry about that either. and it also going to be indexed with inflation. So if I live for a very long time, then at least my purchasing power will stay relatively the same. And I also want something that's going to be passed on to my next generation. So I want to build a legacy for my children and my grandchildren, and this is what we're looking for, really, for passive income. So as an example, so how much can I get if I had $1 million that I've saved in 401k, and now I want to convert that into an annuity? I go to an insurance company and I go there. So you can look at AARP calculator here. There's a bunch of other annuity calculator that you can look online, and then you can calculate this. The amount of money that you would get with $1 million. So this is what I've done here. And the first one is if you're single and you don't get any refund. So that means that this is a male at 65 years old that's going to retire immediately. Convert it's $1 million. So that year, that 65-year-old male will receive $68,000 a year for that. So the no refund piece means that if he dies after a few months, then the payments will stop, and this is it. There's no additional, the insurance company doesn't have to pay anything else beside the 2 months that they've paid. So no refund in terms of reimbursing at least the amount of money that you've paid in premium. If you go with joint, so two partners, both 65 years of age, you would get about $56,000 a year in payment, right, for the $1 million that you put in there. Also, what we want something that's adjusted for inflation. So this is the next one here, and then for when you adjust it for inflation, so it starts a lot lower, as you can see. It starts at $35,000 and goes all the way up to $84,000 at age 100. So obviously, if you need more, this means is that if you need more money than $35,000 initially, that means you need to get more than $1 million in premium. But here we want to stick to that $1 million in premium, and then we're at $35,000. This assumes that the inflation is about 2.775%. So it's going to maintain a pretty good, decent pace with inflation, with the purchasing power. So that when you're age 100, then at least your purchasing power is relatively good. Then we have the joint inflation adjusted. So this is the same as the joint inflation adjusted, and then but with the refund. This one has a refund. This one has no refund. Right. So that's where we are here. So this is what we have. So what's wrong with this picture? So there's a couple of things that I find that is a little bit difficult to kind of decide that this is a good choice, a good product. One of them is that this is not really an investment. So once you pay your premium, the principal no longer has any value. So now that premium belongs to the insurance company, and what you get is a stream of income. So it doesn't leave any legacy. So if you have a joint annuity, life annuity, and both people died, both parents died, then nothing goes to the descendant. That's the end of it. Also, it has a lot of high fees. What I've looked at, there's a number of fees, but in general, you can count on 4 to 10%, maybe sometimes even more than 10%, in order to get that annuity. So that means if you want to have like $1 million payout to be used for a payout, then you're going to have to find like $100,000 in commission that you're going to have to pay on top of that. Also on that joint indexed for inflation annuity, the payout percentage initially is very low. It's 3.2% of your payout of the amount of the premium. So it is pretty low. Later on, yes, it is a little bit higher. It could go like about 8% when you're age 100, but this payout is not really, you shouldn't look at it as a return on your investment, because first of all, it's not an investment, but you should look at it, because if you look at it from an investment perspective, is that the first 23 years of the annuity, the insurance companies is basically repaying the amount of money that you've given them. So first you go with $1 million in negative that you've given to the insurance company, and then over the next 23 years, the insurance company is basically repaying you every year. So here I'm using the indexed annuity here, but basically at age 88, you have your return on investment is 0%, because you're basically where you started. I had $1 million at the beginning, I gave it to the insurance company, and then 23 years later, I have been given back $1 million. If you live all the way to 100 years old, then your return, your annualized return, so for the life of the annuity, is 3.1%. Not a good. So it's easy to get 3.1% in other types of investment. And this is what we're going to talk about next, is what are the other alternative investment to the annuity. So one of the easy one is ETF. So do a SPDR ETF. Normally they earn about 6.3% annually, no fees, no hassle. It's basically reflect exactly how the S&P, what the S&P is. So, you know, the amount that you put in there in the ETF still has value. So it's not gone, it hasn't evaporated. So it's still there. So it provides a legacy. It continues to pay out even if you pass away. So you know, this is pretty good investment. Another one is real estate investment. Rental properties. You can easily get a 10% cash on cash flow on these properties. They increase with inflation because you can increase the rent basically with inflation. The amount invested can also be leveraged. With that $1 million, you can get $5 million in asset with a mortgage, and then the value of these properties also increase over time. So something that on top of getting the cash flow, you're also getting appreciation. It also provides a legacy, so your rental properties can be passed on to your children, and obviously the tenants are going to continue to pay whether you die or not. So the cash flow will continue after death. So to me, this is a pretty good investment in terms of all the different criteria that we're looking for passive income. Another one that's also very good is become a private money lender, basically lending money to investors we prefer on real estate project. It doesn't have to be a real estate project. But basically, if you invest in real estate project, you can get between 8 and 12% annual interest, and they pay out normally on a monthly basis. I mean, that's what we do. We pay out the interest on a monthly basis to our investors. And then the amount is also secured by real estate. So there's a lien on the property for that, for the amount of the loan. Again, the amount invested at that point still has value. It provides a legacy. It still pays out interest whether you pass away or not. So this is also a pretty good investment, pretty clean. You don't have to be a landlord if you don't want to. And then, the only things that you need to find investors that you can rely on. You need to constantly look at due diligence on some of these investments. So it's a little bit more work, but it's kind of like paperwork that you have to look at to make sure that that everything is in order with these investments. There are obviously other alternatives that you can look at, but these are just kind of like the few very common ones. You can also look at bonds and T-bills and all of that and invest in those. Again, working on those and investing on those on a regular basis. There's also dividend stocks that you can look at. Some of them pay a pretty good dividend. But so this is what I had today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to help you.
Thank you for listening to Break Away from the Rat Race with your host, Eric Martel. If you want to share your story and experience with our listeners, please message us on Facebook at Break Away from the Rat Race. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast on iTunes.